ShopChat. ShopChat. I won't send roses or hold the door. I won't remember which dress you wore. My heart is...
Well, I want to talk about that final contest in 2015. David, I want to ask you about a couple of things, and then Cole, I'll circle back to ask more about some of the things that Kyle had started to talk about a minute ago. David, I went back and looked at the scores, and in prelims that year, you guys scored 87.96, which is fantastic. But compared to what you scored in Pittsburgh, I mean, it's only almost 5 points, which to some people may think, well, you know, it's a five points up. But at that level, those 5 points are just a significant gap to make up. And I'm really curious for you, from your point of view, what were some of the key things that happened between prelims and international that year?
So, and perhaps some of the guys can elaborate on this as well once I'm finished here. But we basically, as I remember it personally, so we had our prelims, Cardinal prelims, in March of that year, and you know we were ready to go. You know, we had all these new songs and just this new energy and stuff. But our first night after we got off stage, we just didn't feel that we had done 100% of what we could have put on stage that night. And so, you know, Scott was with us that whole weekend, and you know, going into the finals, we were just telling him kind of how we felt and stuff. And you know, he really started, or at least for me, that was one of the first times that I personally started to really buy into just the emotional space that Scott was trying to get us into. And, you know, just eliminating all of these distractions that get in the way from our performances, right? So he was just really trying to get us into the zone. And then I think it was our finals set in that night. I think we sang I Won't Send Roses first. And it was just one of the most transcendent performances that I remember of that particular song. And it was kind of like my first experience on stage in the moment that we can do this. Like, this is, I can feel the energy, I can feel the story. It was just, there was just so much going on that I just kind of hadn't felt before, right? So we had that moment on stage, and for me, again, and I'm sure it's probably similar for the rest of the guys, but it just lit that spark that much more. It was like, you know what? You know, we got 8th last year, and it doesn't even make sense that we would even come anywhere close to first. But we're ready to work. We're ready to do what it takes to put on some amazing performances in Pittsburgh. And so we made the commitment that, you know, we were going to rehearse quite a bit. You know, we were rehearsing once, twice a week, and just making sure that we just knew exactly what kind of space we needed to get into before each thing. And we rehearsed our tags over and over again. We were kind of notorious for doing pretty well in contests and singing and singing fine, but then like at the tags, like sometimes our tags weren't great, you know? So we were like, okay, we gotta buckle down, and we gotta fix this. So we spent a lot of time on that, so that basically we could trust that it was always going to happen. Yeah. And we didn't have to worry about any right. doubts. So, and I'd let the guys elaborate from that, but that's what I felt.
Well, it certainly happened in Pittsburgh for sure. Now, Cole, I went back and looked. I was kind of curious. You guys, after the prelims that year, you were sort of 4th place going in, which of course is amazing. But I went back and looked, and for the last 10 years, for every year I could find these numbers, the eventual champion was either first or second in prelims going into international. So, given your previous year, and also then where you were ranked, which was very solid medal level quartet, but not first or second, which has typically been the trend. Do you remember specifically thinking from prelims to international, we could actually do this? And if you felt that, what were some of the things that were giving you that confidence?
I definitely believed that it was possible. And I say that because when we sang I Won't Send Roses in the second round at Cardinal, those were really close to what you would consider to be like, if you sang that at that level for all 6 songs, that could win you a competition. So the thought was, if you can do it once, you can do it 6 times. And so, yes, I did believe it was possible, but also the mounted pressure you get from going in first and the expectation of winning can play a large part. We were in everyone's mind a dark horse, right?
Right.
So the thought that we could win was, it was just an unlikely scenario. So we didn't have all of that pressure added to that as well. But with the idea that we could, I think all 4 of us really started to work really hard and say, you know what, if we have the possibility to do it, we're not just going to sit here and try our hardest and then go out there and get 4th or 5th again. Because if we rest on our laurels, that's what happens. And that's exactly what happened in the collegiate competition in 2012.
Yep.
We went in 4 points ahead of everyone else, I believe. We had like 80, and the next quartet was a 76. And then that quartet that got that 76 jumped 6 points while we only jumped 1 and beat us. So, we sort of learned the lesson the hard way on that one. But, so we didn't want to rest, and we hadn't sung Love Me or Leave Me or How Could I Ever Know in contest yet. And we were really excited to premiere those in the finals.
Yeah.
As a little bit, especially How Could I Ever Know, a little bit edgy for the time in some ways, but it had all of the impact and all of the story. I feel like as members of the audience that experience barbershop, for 4 or 5 days before that, you get there and we all just slowly begin to open our hearts as we have these experiences and we go back and reflect on them. By the time we all get to Saturday, it's just joy in the room. And we had the message to share for that audience that night.
Yeah.
And so,
That's fantastic. Now, Kyle, I cut you off. I'm so sorry a minute ago, because you were talking about getting prepared on your songs earlier, but then you also started to talk about some specific technical things that your dad was working on. I wanted to come back to that because I would have to think that shift in vocal production that he worked on with you guys also played a huge role in the bump up going into international. So please now go ahead and talk more about the infamous vowel chart.
The infamous vowel chart. Well, not to go too far back, but I think in 2003, he had a version of that when I was in high school. And he had tried basically to use our South Bend Mishawaka chorus as a guinea pig to try and test out some of that stuff. And I had tried doing that while singing Tags International that year. And I had some background in that, but he hadn't tried it with the whole quartet as like a case study, I don't think.
Yeah.
Up to that point, I think we were the first ones where, he had fleshed out some of the ideas over the last 10 years and done some research and that kind of stuff. And he's not a vocal pedagogy guy. Like, he doesn't have all the background in that necessarily, but he kind of knows acoustics pretty well, and he knows the overtone series and things like that. So he has definitely some good cursory knowledge for trying to get that to work. So in some ways, you can say certain vowels will reinforce similar overtones, so you try and stay in the same vowel family. So I don't know how in depth you want me to get with this, but basically he was getting us to really try that, and basically everything came down to every English vowel that we sing is in one of 4 families of vowel families, in sets of 3, a bright vowel, a middle vowel, and a darker vowel. So that's just something that we tried to work on, basically to get all three in that family to kind of feel like it rings the same way. So we would sing something like last, lost, and long are all three different vowels. And if we can make it so that way we're randomly singing any of those three notes and the ring feels the same, then that kind of gets us into a zone to where we know that that is where the family rings. And you kind of, instead of last, lost, and long, last, lost, long is a lot closer. So
Right.
you basically change your vowel language to be as close to the center on that. So that way you have less to change. Therefore, less can be different from everyone else. So that's basically the idea. And he introduced it to us as we were trying to sing rooms in Las Vegas after the contest, and that was the wrong time, but it was actually kind of right.
Well, by contrast, I think for those who are watching, like when I first joined barbershop up in Valparaiso in 1998, the thought was very much focused on matching specific individual vowels. And a lot of that was done by manipulating the musculature of how you shape the vowels, which of course can add a lot of tension. So this is like, so it's almost like shaping individual vowels from the outside in, whereas the process you just described is focusing on families, not individual vowels, and doing it more from the inside out, so that there's much less work and manipulation externally, but you can find that same cohesive ring spot. Is that kind of how you all experienced it?
Yeah, I mean, from what I remember, because I, of course, grew up in it, so I heard about the vowel matching idea, and that does work. And if you especially hear quartets probably from the 80s,
right,
and listen to that, you hear a lot of that going on, but a lot of them are in a lot different places from each other.
Right.
So basically what that does is try to make everybody have the same dialect.
Gotcha.
You're trying to line up dialects rather than having just a more neutral Iowa type of dialect when you sing.
Right.
Nothing is, if you try to make everybody sound like they're from New Jersey, it's not going to work unless you're from there, and try and mix people who have that strong accent with Indiana people. You might run into some incongruentness. So basically, we're just trying to take the individual shapes, rather than saying these are the shapes you need to speak like you're from Iowa.
Right.
You need to speak like you're from Kentucky. Like, none of that. It's just you need to speak in the most neutral, or you need to sing in the most neutral spot. And I'm also not a pedagogy guy, so I have more experience to kind of like clear up anything that I might make sound confusing.
Sure. Yeah. Theo, you want to add something to that?
Nope.
It's so funny. I don't know if you all will remember this, but I think it was after 2015, and I saw you guys at Harmony U, and I came up to you one night and I said, I listened to you guys so closely, and it doesn't sound to me like you're trying to match vowels, but you ring everything, and I don't understand what's going on. So getting more of the backstory now on the approach to this, it really makes total sense. All right, well, enough of that nerd talk. I want to get to the exciting round by round contest that took place in Pittsburgh in 2015. I went back and looked at the scores, and it turned into basically a three-way shootout between you guys and Forefront and Main Street. And I didn't realize this. I could have sworn you guys scored the highest number of points in the second round, because I was doing the webcast. I was one of the commentators that year. And even though I wasn't even in the arena itself, when you guys got done, the electricity, I mean, you could feel it all the way out in the lobby. But going back and looking at the scores, Forefront scored the most points in round one and also round two, although you guys had definitely gained in round two with Spend My Life with You. Why hadn't we heard that before? No, totally teasing. But Spend My Life with You, and also Till I Hear You Sing Once More. And then I didn't realize this, Main Street actually scored the most points in the finals round. You all scored the second highest total in finals, but each round you were getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and you scored enough in total to pull out a very thrilling 11-point. When I remember when we got the scores and we were making the announcement for the webcast, I was making the announcement, and I can feel the zip of energy through me now, because it was such an exciting contest to me personally, because this wasn't one of the top 2 quartets going in. This was a very historic, and it was the kind of thing you could actually feel it happening all through the week. But I'm really curious, especially how you guys felt knowing what songs you were going to do in the final round. And Theo, I'll just kind of ask you first to talk about, and then all of you are welcome to add in how you felt each round that week.
Sure. Yeah. I'll be honest, the more we have sung as a quartet, especially leading like from 12, 13, and 14, 2012, 13, 14, I feel like I'm the one that actually remembers the least when it comes to actual being in the, on stage, because we talk a lot about left brain and right brain. And when you're left brain, the analytical, the thinker, the memory and everything,
right.
And the right brain is very much the doer and just living in the moment and everything. And I used to be, I remember just going out on stage in any performance, and it would get worse as we got closer to 2015. I'm like, I don't remember what just happened. And Scott's like, that's great. You're living in the moment. Like, let's just do that. So really, all I remember, I remember everything outside of the performances, which it's a little bittersweet, because it's like, well, that's great, because I must have been in the moment. But I just remember going out there, and then we sang, and then all of a sudden, before I knew it, the audience, that was one of the things that I remember the most, is just the audience's overwhelming just acceptance of what we had to give that week. The other 3, it's no secret that I'm probably the most easily pushed over the edge emotionally. But every single set, I got off that stage and just sobbed my eyes out, because and it was just because I was so overwhelmed with the, number one, it didn't feel like we made any huge errors in any of the sets. And the other thing was just it felt good. That week to me, those performances felt the best. And not because we got everything right, but just because it just felt right. Mm-hmm. It felt so freeing to just go out there. And we had found this space in Pittsburgh that really was just an open vulnerability and just acceptance of, it doesn't matter if I'm at 100% of my game. Right. What I can do is I can give 100% of what I have right now. And no matter how my voice is, and the audience reception every time just pushed me over the edge. And I remember the semifinals in particular, that was a really memorable thing, because again, walk on stage, saying I don't remember anything. We walk off stage, and I remember that seeing the judges coming up, because it was right at intermission.
Right.
And we were right before intermission. And obviously the judges, they're very, very professional. They didn't say a word to us, but they just kind of came over and just gave us these looks and hugs and everything. It was just this is even way too much. I can't even process this, but it was evident that it spoke to them as well. And I will be honest that I think Cole mentioned earlier that, by the end of the week, we just felt this joy. And I'm just going to say that was one of the emotions in the room. I think the other emotion for me, and maybe Dave, I think maybe you and I, from what I remember, we felt some fear and anxiety as the week continued to go, because number one, our voices, we were just head cases about our voices as we continued through the week. And we all know that international is a tough week to get through, especially as a competitor. And so we kind of had our worries and doubts and everything. But also for me, I was like, the first round went really well. Okay, we gotta make sure to at least do the same, if not try. How do you top that? And then the semifinals happened, and then we had that even bigger reception. It's we're screwed for the finals. We can't possibly top that. And I just remember that kind of fear and anxiety. And not only that, but my voice is getting tired. And so I do remember that Scott, I think, had to get especially David and I, kind of in a really good, comfortable place again for the finals. But I mean, I will say the Kitzmillers, though, I mean, they were, again, they're just a steam engine, just, you know, felt good about the beginning. And at least from the outside, I mean, their countenance did not waver. And that was actually a huge help for me. And I'm assuming it was for Dave too, just to see, because Cole was like Saturday, Cole was exactly pure joy and elation. He's like, I don't even care what happens. Like, I'm like, this is awesome.
That was after I sat in the Dunkin' Donuts alone and talking to no one for an hour and a half. But after I left there, I was like, I don't care anymore. I basically dealt with my anxiety and fear and nervousness by just sitting there and talking to no one.
Well, I often feel a sense of exhilaration after spending an hour and a half at Dunkin' Donuts as well, Cole. So probably for different reasons. So David, why don't you talk a little bit about how you were feeling that week?
So I guess just because it's fresh in my mind, Saturday specifically, you know, we had just done again two of the best just feeling rounds that we had just ever done at International. And to me, I'll never forget as long as I live, the audience for us was just different that week than it had ever been. Like, it almost seemed like before we even sang a note for I Won't Send Roses, just the positive, loving energy coming from that audience. And we are a quartet, I would say, maybe even probably more than most, where we're just very receptive to the audience. You know, if the audience is loving what we're doing, it just can, it's a vicious cycle, man. We just start going crazy, right? So, and so the audience just felt different, and it was just every time we'd go out there, I would even if I was tired and even if I was anxious, like the moment I would walk out and feel that, it was like, okay, I know what I need to do. I know why this matters, and we owe it to these people to put on the best performance ever. For me on Saturday, there were a lot of high notes in Love Me or Leave Me and in How Could I Ever Know for the tenor. Very high notes in the falsetto, and my falsetto is not as the most powerful. So I was super anxious and nervous about it that morning, and I just knew, like, my voice, just like Theo's, was kind of starting to go out and stuff. And so when Cole was sitting at Dunkin' Donuts by himself, I was in the hotel room all by myself for 2 hours that Saturday, and I just kept going over and over and over that stuff because I needed to know that I could do it, and I needed to know that I could trust it. And when I was able to do that, then Scott came in and did some sort of magical hypnosis that I don't remember. I don't have no idea what he did, but right before we went on stage in that ready room, I didn't care about anything. I was just ready to just go and just sing, and it was awesome.
Oh, that's fantastic. So Kyle, you're one of those performers that whenever I watch you perform, you always to me look like you are the most unflappable. There's absolutely no problem. This is going to be a piece of cake every time I've ever seen you perform. So I just want to know, honestly, just, you know, between us, is that really the truth? Because that's sure what it looks like.
The truth is, I have pretty much been accused of being a statue from the moment I started singing in Quartet. And I've had an issue getting my true expression out. I have since learned how to make that look like, hey, things are really easy. So some of that is a defense mechanism. I also think that I try to do everything I can to not get myself in a zone like that. And, you know, whatever comes out is fine. I don't have, for whatever reason, I don't think about how I could possibly mess something up. I try not to live in that space. I think that that's been something that I, for whatever reason, haven't worried about very much. I have issues thinking about all the potential group problems we could have. Not necessarily thinking about a person in the group, but just like, this spot doesn't always work. So that's where my mentality goes. But I try to instead of letting my mind wander on the performance, I try to go, okay, my job is to think about pounding the rhythm in place, or keeping the beat, or trying to drive. There was a mentality shift in roles that we talked about, where it said the bass is in some ways, now there are different philosophies. It doesn't have to be this way, but the bass's job can be to kind of lead the direction of the group, which is kind of different from what we've heard, where the lead is in charge of that. You know, the Randy Chisholms and Joe Connolly, like they have a vision, and we're going to do the lead's vision. And I know that Theo went, what if I don't have the right vision, or what if it's not? So there was some of that anxiety, and when we heard about that other mentality where the bass can kind of drive things, that kind of fit my personality. So that's something we went with, and then that made it so that way that pressure wasn't on Theo, and he could just perform and not have to have the responsibility of all that on his shoulders. So my job is to the way I've tried to work around that is to try and think about my role and do my role, and not think about, try and take out that here are the group problems we could possibly have, and just keep that kind of focus.
I gotcha. Now, Cole, I'm just so curious. How old were you when you guys actually won in 2015?
I was 22.
Okay. And you guys were all relatively young. So you fulfill this amazing dream of winning a championship, but you're all so young. So, Cole, what was your all's thinking about how do we maintain our purpose as a quartet now that we're suddenly done competing?
Yeah, it's a question that I asked several times, because once you're done competing, it can feel quick, especially after your first year. Once you go through and you sing your swan set and you do your HU set, what is it? What are we doing this for after that? And we start thinking about what do we want to leave the world with, 40 years from now. And so a focus on creating a lot of media that people can consume, and continuing also to just sing new music. We don't want to sing the same stuff. Like, we'll sing the classics, we'll sing Roses at a show, but we also want to make sure that we have some new repertoire and some stuff that makes it so people will have a new show. Like, say, if the same chorus hired us 5 years later, we could come and sing only maybe one or two of the classics and then a bunch of new songs on top of that. So we want to keep our repertoire new and fresh, and we want to record a lot of albums and have things to consume after we're done, which is going to be 80 years from now. So
yeah, that's great. Well, guys, I have just a couple of more questions left for you all tonight. This one I think is probably going to be the most musically sophisticated and theoretically abstract question of all. David Zimmerman, I would like for you to tell us, of the four members of Instant Classic, who is the best at Mario Kart?
Who is the best? Now, this is a quandary. Oh man. So if you want to know right now, this very second, the COVID-19 quarantine has really sharpened my skills at Mario Kart, and I think that right now I could beat all of these guys pretty well. Pretty well.
Listen, I was the best for like 4, 5, 6 years. And you know what? I'm okay passing the torch. I can't be the best forever. It's okay.
So Cole after he graduated college, so he didn't have a job for a few months because he graduated college, and basically we were going to Pittsburgh. But he had 2 goals in life, and that was Instant Classic and Mario Kart. So he was very, very good in 2015.
Now, I've never played Mario Kart one time in my life, so I had to call upon an expert for some advice and questioning. So, David, my friend Eddie Holt wanted me to ask you these questions. He said, ask him, hey, Zimmy Zims, why are you so good that the other guys get star power-ups in second place? I have no idea what that means. And then he wanted me to ask, why are you so helplessly bad racing against Clamor? So those are questions I'm supposed to ask you for him.
I just for the audience. So Klama is Eddie Holt's name in Mario Kart, and I will never be able to beat Eddie Holt in Mario Kart. He is the best person I've ever seen in my life, and I will never beat Klama. And what was the other question you asked me?
Something about why are you so good? The other guys get star power.
Yeah. So if you're really far ahead, then even if you're in second place, you're so far behind that you get amazing power-ups. Because it's like we got to find some fairness. There has to be a possibility that person could win.
Very good. Well, all right. Well, one last question, Theo. What's next up for Instant Classic? What can we look for from you guys here on the horizon?
Yeah. Well, we're going to be releasing our Christmas album this year.
What?
So we'll. I mean, so the short of it is that we were really excited to do a Harmony Explosion fundraiser. Because again, we all love our video games. I've got my setup here and everything. But we decided that Kyle and I would do a speed running race of The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. And so we said, let's raise some money for Harmony Explosion. If we get certain, if we hit certain milestones, then we'll offer different, award tiers. And the short is that we said, hey, if we raise $10,000, we'll release the Christmas album. And the backstory behind that, for those that don't know, is that our Christmas album is coming out next year. And we made a little funny gag on the AIC virtual show where David was really excited about Christmas and wasn't getting it through his head that it's not this year, but it's next year. Well, we didn't think that we could raise $10,000 with this fundraiser because it's video games and barbershop, and they have to be we figured that they'd have to be interested in both to donate to this. So there's no way that we can raise $10,000. So let's just, as a joke,
narrow niches, right? You don't think
very narrow. And so we're like, let's just say we'll release the Christmas album. That'll at least get folks fired up.
Right.
Maybe, a little bit. Maybe we'll get to 3 or 4 or 5,000.
Little did you know.
Little did we know. I mean, we raised over $10,000, and now we want to be men of our word. So, but we also don't want to rush a fifth, because all of our albums have 15 songs. That's the plan moving forward. So, we don't want to rush a 15 song CD in 4 months or whatever. So we're going to release a Christmas EP this year, which is going to have 5 songs, and then the full album will be released next year. So we're doing that. All of us are really involved in our home chapter, Circle City Sound. CCS isn't necessarily the only driving force behind our quartet, but it's very much our family, and we have a lot of family bonds there. And so I know David has to kind of remind us in rehearsals to talk about Instant Classic at some point, because whenever we get together with the quartet and we're rehearsing, 9 times out of 9, we always start talking about chorus stuff, because I'm the director, David's the assistant director, Cole's music VP, Kyle's past president. And so we're all talking about what's next for the chorus. And so, so we are really invested in that. But as Cole said too, I mean, the next thing for us is just to continue making music together. And I think one of the great things, I think if you'd ask any of us, none of us are really itching to go form a new quartet or or really hop back into contests anytime soon, because I mean, we really just enjoy the music that we make together. And I mean, we enjoy the family that we have here in Instant Classic. And, it's if it's not broke, just keep going with it. And it really has just been a really wonderful, I feel very fortunate to be singing with these guys. I mean, all joking aside, it's just the music that we make is very near and dear to my heart. I think it is for all of us. And so, we talk about how contest was just one of our experiences, one of our milestones, and that, to really create a meaningful, legacy, for no other better word, is just, you just have to keep singing. You have to keep making music. You have to keep growing, and you have to just keep doing it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep going to conventions because we love it. We love Harmony U, even though we can't go every year, but we want to really make sure that we can attend that when we can. We love our district. We want to be involved with that. So we're just not going away.
Well, that's just so awesome. And I I was thinking back preparing for the interview that when I got to hang out with you guys a little bit in 2011, and I think I asked to sing a song with you guys. I think it was "You Keep Coming Back Like a Song," and there's a part where is it the word December? December is repeated, and I remember standing singing with you guys, and you all locked up the sound twice. And I'm not really a part of that. You know, I'm just trying to remember what the notes are. And I remember thinking, these guys are great. And so just getting to be in that sound just for a moment, it made me realize that you all had such a bright future in store musically. But quite honestly, when I think about you four guys, not only what you've accomplished as a quartet, but you are all great arrangers. You are all heavily invested in your local chapter in the ways that you just talked about, Theo. Some of you judge. I can't remember if all of you are in the program or not, but you all coach. I honestly can't think of a championship quartet we've ever had where all four guys are so good at all aspects of barbershop. So you guys have really exceeded, you know, back in those days when I had that chance to sing with you, I knew you would be great, but to think about all that you guys have actually done for barbershop and will continue to do for many years to come truly makes you a champion of champions. So thank you so much for all you've done for us. And we want to especially thank you for taking your time to be with us on this episode of Shop Chat, and look forward to hearing from you this year with the short play version of your CD, and then to see what comes down the pike next year. But guys, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having us.
Shane.
It's been a pleasure.
And we want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us on this championship episode of Shop Chat.
Shop Chat. Shop